think we can start. Sorry for the troubles, we have problems with sound, but it seems that everything is okay. And this presentation should be on the later slide, but we have a little change in agenda. Okay, my name is Karol, and today I want to talk to you about Bitrise. Who is using Bitrise? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see a few people, thanks. Okay, so first let's describe what is a Bitrise. Well, in one sentence we can describe it as CI/CD PaaS. Let's expand those shortcuts. CI stands for continuous integration. It is a process of integrating small changes like single commits or few commits grouped in pull requests into already finished part of the project. But before we integrate the changes, we need to ensure that they have good enough quality. If they even compile, if they passing unit tests. To perform those unit tests and other kind of verification, we need some environment, some either virtual or physical machine on which those tests will be run. And it is a place for Bitrise. It provides us environment for continuous integration. CD stands for continuous delivery. It's an extension to continuous integration by delivering final product to clients or end users. In case of Android apps, it may be, for example, uploading them to Play Store, to usually alpha or beta track. And PaaS stands for Platform as a Service. In case of Bitrise, it means that it is an online service hosted on servers controlled by Bitrise company, and customers can only pay for access to it. They cannot download it and deploy to their own servers, like for example we can do with CI tools like Jenkins or Circle CI. The next important thing is that Bitrise is dedicated for mobile projects. Mobile means, for example, native Android apps, native iOS, Flutter, React Native, and so on. And as a consequence, all the effort of Bitrise staff and external contributors are focused on integrations related to mobile app development. Any changes in that matter are usually adapted faster on Bitrise than in general purpose CA tools like Jenkins or Travis. Example from real life. Before we switched to Bitrise in our company, I think about 2 years ago, we used self-hosted Jenkins. And there was a plugin for Android development. I created a few pull requests to them, and I need to wait usually few months to they even be reviewed, not merged. My last pull request there waited about 1.5 of a year, but on Bitrise they usually review pull requests in few days. So few days versus few months is huge difference. The thing which is most visible to developers which are using Bitrise are pull request status checks. Here at the bottom we can see 3 pages. This is a screenshot from GitHub pull request status page. Somewhere at the bottom you can find such badges. And this green check mark means that pull request has passed. Build has completed successfully, so by definition it is safe to be merged. We can even configure GitHub to allow only pull requests with successful status checks to be merged. This one means that it's pending in progress, and that cross mark means that build has failed or has been aborted. And before we can see such checks, we need to integrate Bitrise with our GitHub repo. First, you need to sign up on Bitrise, and then you can add the app. First step is to choose whether app is public or private. Public means usually open source project, and as the name suggests, all the build logs will be public. These kind of projects can be built free of charge on Bitrise. But if you have closed source project, you can use private app for it. And if you choose whether it is private or public, you can connect the repository. In case of GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, this process is pretty simple because Bitrise have apps on the relevant platforms, for example GitHub. You only need to authorize that app to access your account, and in this first step on the screen we will just see a list of repos which you have access to. And you need to click just on the icon. In case of custom GitHub server hosting, you need to paste repo URL in this step. Next, you need to set up repository access. And again, in case of GitHub and other popular tools, it is done for you by Bitrise app. It will generate SSH key pair and add public key to the provider. For example, in GitHub it is a deploy key on the repo. In case of custom hostings, you can put SSH key here, paste it. And Bitrise can clone this repo. Of course, you need to choose an appropriate branch. After that, it will try to determine which kind of project it is. Android app, iOS, or React Native. Depending on that, it will choose appropriate stack. Stack means operating system and default set of workflows. Workflow means list of steps which are performed during the build. We'll dive into it deeper in the next slides. And the last step is a webhook setup. Webhook is a mechanism which allows the SCM, like GitHub, to notify external services, like Bitrise, about events on the repo. Usually we're interested in events like new pull request is created, new commit is added to open pull request, or the pull request is merged. Okay, let's look how it works step by step. We have developers. They write some code, commit it, and push it to the remote repository. Next step depends on the SCM. Usually, this step is called creating a pull request. This is how it works on GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. But in other SCMs, it may be called different. For example, on Gerrit, we have change, which is created automatically. You don't need to open it. The idea is the same. We have new changes which we want to integrate with already existing branch. Then SCM can send webhook to Bitrise. And this webhook is just plain HTTP request with data about exchange. For example, the new pull request. It's name of source branch, destination branch, author, commit, hash, and so on. And if Bitrise receives this webhook, and there is app configured on it, it needs to perform lookup in the trigger map. This map is important because we can have more than one workflow. The most common one is about verifying new changes. So it will be bound to event of creating new pull request and adding new commits to open pull request. But we can have also another workflow which is fired when pull request is merged. Because if pull request is merged, it means that it is already verified due to the previous workflow. It is probably peer-reviewed, but by code reviewer. So we don't need to perform verifications. The same workflow doesn't make sense. Instead, on this step, on this case, we usually perform actions like uploading the APKs or other kind of final products, deploying it in case of Android apps, it may be to Play Store or HockeyApp and so on. Okay. If Bitrise determines which workflow needs to be run, then it spawns a virtual machine, and Bitrise CLI command line interface is performing step by step this given workflow. When this workflow is finished, then status can be sent back to the SCM, so we can see pull request status check. Okay, let's dive into workflow deeper. What is a workflow? It's basically ordered list of steps. Here we have steps and environment in which those steps are running. Environment is just the same environment which you have in shell when you open terminal app. Apart from default values, default variables like path, home, and so on, there are many more injected by Bitrise. Some of them are injected at the beginning of the build, like Bitrise build number or Git repository URL, which comes from webhook, and the flag determining whether it is pull request or not. But there are many more environment variables. They can be also added by steps. Here we have an example, an Android build step. As the name suggests, builds Android apps. So it exports paths to those build APKs into environment, and next steps can use that list. For example, we have HockeyApp deploy and Android deploy step, which uploads APKs to HockeyApp. Okay, let's describe step. Step is just a representation of single task during the build, like cloning the repo, running Gradle task, or sending a Slack message. Now, there are about 200 steps in the official Bitrise step library. When I first gave this talk in April, there was about 160 steps, so the number is constantly growing. Steplib is for steps like Maven Central is for Java libraries. Everyone can add his own step to the steplib. It needs to be open source, but in addition to those processes on Maven Central or in Bitrise, these steps needs to be reviewed by Bitrise staff. Apart from ready steps in the steplib, you can use also custom steps. You just need to specify the URL of that repo with step. Steps are usually written in Go language. Most of the official Bitrise steps are written in Go. They provide a set of Go libraries which can be used for steps, which covers the most common processes during CI, like executing commands, parsing JSONs, printing colored info to the build log, and so on. But there are few super simple steps which are just shell scripts. Okay, let's look how it looks, how we can configure the Bitrise to fit our needs. We have such workflow editor, which is available when you go into the app page. At the top we have workflow selector. In this case, we have the develop verification workflow. I chose this naming convention, but you can name your workflow whatever you want. Here we have a list of steps. They are executed from top to bottom. If we click on one of these steps, on the right side we will see configuration page of this step. Here we have name. This green badge means that this is official step provided by Bitrise. For example, this one doesn't have this badge because it is my step. I am not employee of the Bitrise. It's the community created step. Here is a link to GitHub with sources of this step. As I said before, each step needs to be open source. So if something is not working properly, you can just click here and go to the issue tracker. Here we have a version number selector. You can choose some specific version or always latest, as here. Here we have a switch which decides if these steps should run always or only if there is a success. Usually it makes sense only to only run the given step if none of the previous steps has failed. For example, if cloning step has failed because someone has revoked deploy key, for example, then it does not make sense to perform static code analysis or unit testing because those steps will always fail. So by default, this switch is turned off. But in some steps like Slack notification, we may be interested especially about failures. Developers can get notification so they can fix that build which is failing. Below we have inputs for that step. This file downloader have two inputs, source URL and destination path on which the downloaded file will be saved. Both of them are required. And apart from specifying hard-coded value here, we can use environment variables. We can use predefined environment variables provided by Bitrise CLI or by steps, but we can also add our custom ones here in this tab. Secrets work just like environment variables, but by default they are stripped from build logs and they are not available for pull request. Secrets are used for things like API tokens, credentials, API keys and so on. And below we have outputs, the variables which are added to the environment by this step. And here we can edit this workflow in text format in YAML. Here we have content, example content generated by Bitrise. This is a HockeyApp page of the build. We see that it was generated by Bitrise. Link to the build. Here is a Slack message. And by the way, this build and Slack message refers to Toast app. Toast is a local Android developer meetup organized here in Wrocław. We can have several kinds of triggers in Bitrise. First, which was already covered in previous slides, are webhooks, triggered by event in SCM like GitHub. There are also scheduled builds, which we can set to be run on particular days of the week and hours. It may be useful for things like sprint build if you work in Scrum. So, for example, if sprint ends in Monday, you can set the scheduled build to the Monday morning. So whichever is already merged, it will be built on that time. We have also manual triggers. They may be useful for example, releasing the production versions of the apps. Unlike alpha or beta production versions may be also restricted by some marketing actions, or two platforms must be synchronized. So this release is often performed manually, not automatically. Okay, as you may remember from one of the first slides, the whole build may have two outcomes. It can be even successful or failed, green or red, but individual steps can have four outcomes. Successful and failed, I think, doesn't need explanation. So they are like failed or successful unit tests. But we have also two more outcomes. Steps can be ignored. It usually happens when one of the previous steps has failed, and this given ignored steps was not marked to be run always. Like here on this page, on this screenshot, this Android build step has failed. This wasn't configured to run always, so it was ignored. It was not even started, so we have neither success nor failure. And skipped happens if step itself has failed, but it was configured to not alter the whole build status. It is often used with helper steps like Slack notifications or Chuck Norris jokes adding to the build log. They are not directly related to the quality of code, so even if something goes wrong here, we don't want the whole build to be failed and the GitHub merge to be blocked, etc. So we can configure it to be skipped. Okay, let's look at pricing. For single developers or small groups, we can have individual developer plans. It costs $40 per month. Here we can run only one build at a time. And maximum duration of the build is constrained to 45 minutes. Number of builds in the month is not constrained. We have also organizational plans. It costs a little bit more, but you can buy more concurrent builds. You can have more builds run at the same time. Maximum duration of the build is also longer here. And Bitrise have several discounts to the users. Maybe this is not strictly discount, but for open source apps, building is free of charge, like in that individual plan. Limits are the same, but concurrency here is per one app. So if you have 10 open source apps, you can have 10 builds run at the same time, and it has nothing to do with paid subscription if you have any. 10% discount is when you choose annual billing instead of monthly. $20 for students. And this is interesting. If you are Bitrise step author, you publish it to StepLib, you can also get a discount. But what is important here, you need to maintain this step. If there are bugs reported and you don't fix them for a long amount of time, Bitrise can cancel your discount. And we have also free plan available also for closed source projects, but it has very low limits, 10 minutes per build and 200 builds per month. Bitrise is mostly open source. I said that all the steps are open source. Almost all of the core business logic, like webhook processors, the images, not images, maybe Docker files, which are used to build images of stacks, workflow editor, the Golang libraries used in steps, all that is open source and MIT licensed. You can send pull requests to them, you can use them if you want outside of the Bitrise. But things like spawning virtual machines, like listening for incoming webhooks, these daemons are not open source, and here is a business model for them. They earn money for providing that service to you, so they not open source this part of Bitrise. And we have some interesting community. There is a Bitrise step community which works as orphanage for steps not maintained by their authors. If such steps stop being maintained, the author doesn't react to the issues, the Bitrise staff forks this repo because everything needs to be open sourced if it is in steplib, and either Bitrise employee or someone from community fixes the bug and URL on the steplib is changed. Okay, that's all about Bitrise. Here are a few words about me. My name is Karol Wrótniak. I work as a Droid developer at Droids and Roids here in Wrocław. I am also one of GDG Wrocław leads, so I'm also organizer of this DevFest. You can find me on GitHub. My latest project is a step for Bitrise for injecting funny Chuck Norris text into build logs. But I have also a few other open source projects, usually related to the Android development and Gradle plugins. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Medium. My last story is about these steps about Chuck Norris. And here's my email. And if you have any questions, do we have a time? We have 5 minutes for questions if you have any.
Hello. Hello, Karol. Thank you for the presentation. And my question is, do you use a Fastlane in your Android project with Bitrise, or only use Bitrise for CI and CD?
No, I am not using Fastlane
anymore. Okay, so I can replace the Fastlane using Bitrise. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Fastlane, but I think yes. But you can also run Fastlane from Bitrise.
So if I have a Fastlane script, I also can use it in Bitrise.
Yeah.
So this is a great feature. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marek, and I have a question because we are working on an Android TV project for commercial TV operators, and we did a simple setup with on our GitLab server. We use GitLab CI. So how do you encourage me to switch to Bitrise when we already have it set up with in a GitLab environment, and we have a set of steps, set of verifications with Fastlane, and of course we do not have that general UI for managing those steps. We don't have those open sources, but you know it is free for us, and we don't need to share our source code anywhere. So, what are the biggest advantages of Bitrise in comparison to using traditional approach, such as defining your GitLab CI script? Thanks for answer.
I'm not familiar with GitLab. I can't say directly how to encourage you. Maybe you don't need to switch if the GitLab CI fits your needs. But as I said on one of the first slides, before we switched to Bitrise in our company, Droids and Roids, we used self-hosted Jenkins. And the major problem with it was that any changes which Google has made, for example, in SDK, are reflected in the Jenkins plugins with very long delay. So we need to patch that plugin or create workaround to install new version of SDK and so on. And also in our case, we have self-hosted server. So we need developers' time for maintaining that physical server, the HTTP access, etc. And in case of PAS like Bitrise, we don't need to spend the time for it.
Okay, so it is about delegating work to an external
Yeah.
company, right?
But if you don't need a workflow editor, you might be fine with GitLab CI.
Last question, okay?
Hey, so I have a question. Would you consider using this Bitrise, for projects other than mobile applications? And if yes, how is it better than, for example, TeamCity?
I am using this Bitrise also for Gradle plugins which are not mobile strictly. But if you have like backend projects or something unrelated like desktop applications, I think Bitrise will not be a best choice because all the integrations, maybe not all, but most the integrations, most the steps are related to mobile app development. If you need to do something else, you probably need to write an own step and maintain it, or write shell scripts. So I think in this case you don't need to use Bitrise. Okay, I think we have no time. Okay, so thank you.